for June 20th, 2011 to order. Just a couple of reminders. Let's do a couple of reminders. If you do have a cell phone or a pager, we would ask that you please take that off, either turn it to the off mode or the vibrate mode. We would certainly appreciate that. Also, if you would like to speak to any issues, either on the agenda or during the public comment period, we do have speaker request forms. They look like this. They're to your left, my right, over on the media table. If you please fill that out and hand it to the end of the dais there to Charlene, and that way, as we make our way down the agenda, we'll make sure we do not overlook you. Let's see. First thing, as always, is the roll call and determination of a quorum. Charlene, if you would, please.
Peterson. Weifenbach. Davis. Hadcock. Here. Kroger. Costello.
Here.
Quaker. Waugh. Here. Brown. Here. Mason. Here. We have quorum.
Thank you, everyone. Next thing, as always, is the invocation. I please ask everyone to please rise. Pastor Dale Barchard from the Family Heritage Alliance will be giving our invocation. Then please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor?
Let's pray. Father, we are grateful, Lord, for this night that you have given us, this day of life. We're grateful for the reason for which we're gathered here this evening. In just a few short days, we will be celebrating the birthday of this great nation of ours. We are grateful, Lord, for her. We ask your forgiveness for those times that we have taken her for granted. But Lord, tonight we are gathered here and we ask your blessing on our city council. Father, for those that have sacrificed their time and their energy, we are grateful that they are here. We ask your blessing on their loved ones who have also sacrificed for their presence here this evening. We do pray, Lord, tonight for their wisdom and discernment. We pray for unity and harmony. We pray for them as we move this city forward. We pray for them, the words of Micah the prophet, that they would act justly, that they would love mercy, and that they would walk humbly before you, O God. This we pray in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We pray in the Father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Jesus the Christ. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pastor. Always nice to see you. Next thing on the agenda, as always, is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additional items that need to be added to the agenda tonight? I do have a 48A, which is an additional bid award. Is that correct, Robert? I also have a 48B, which is setting a special council meeting on July 5th at 6:45 to canvass the vote of the runoff election. And Pauline, was there an item also? Let's see. There's an item that should not have been on the agenda. Jason, do we just need to table that as we work our way down through it? Okay, very good. Any additional items to be placed on the agenda, please turn your light. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to add a discussion on executive sessions.
Okay, we will call that 48C. Okay, additional items. Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a raffle request to add for Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Call that 70A.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional items? If so, please turn in light. If not, the chair would look for a motion to approve the agenda as published with the addition of a 48A, 48B, 48C, and a 70A. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. We're on to the approval of the minutes, and Chair would look for a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting of the June 6, 2011 City Council meeting, and also the special council meeting on June 9, 2011. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to awards and recognitions, and I'm going to ask Mary to come up and join me, if you would, please. It truly is always an honor to recognize one of our veterans. And I'm going to tell you, this is a special day for me because I've known Mary Piper for 40-some years, Mary. I used to play at her house. She had a lot of boys that were all my age, and I remember going over there, and she was always very kind, even when we were misbehaving. So this is, of course, I never did. This is a special moment for me, and let me just go ahead and read the recognition. And it reads, in partnership with the Veterans Coordination Commission, we're pleased to present the June 2011 Veteran of the Month recognition to Mary Vasquez Piper. Now, I do want to also bring up a point. It was the fact that the last time that we actually recognized a veteran who was a woman was back in 2007. So this really is a special night. Let me tell you a little bit about Mary Piper. She was born in San Antonio, Texas. She graduated from nursing school as an RN in 1951 and received her commission as an officer in the United States Air Force in November of 1953. Mary received orders to report to the Rapid City Air Force Base, but between the time of her receiving her orders and reporting, the base changed its name to Ellsworth Air Force Base. And at the time, there were only 8 other military nurses serving the 100-bed hospital at the newly named Ellsworth Air Force Base. In August 1954, a B-36 with 27 souls aboard crashed at the end of the base runway. 24 died immediately in the crash. 3 servicemen, including the pilot, the co-pilot, were brought to the hospital. And Mary, the only military nurse on duty, started an IV on then Lieutenant Bumps, the plane's navigator, who ultimately was the only person to survive the crash. He recovered and resumed flying. Mary did not see him again until he returned to the 28th Bomb Wing reunion 6 years ago, where he asked to meet the nurse who saved his life, and that, of course, being Mary. Mary attended the Elite Flight Nurse Program in July of 1955 at Gunter Air Force Base in Alabama and received a pair of silver wings at graduation and was then promoted to first lieutenant. She married Lieutenant Piper, a fighter pilot, that year and later resigned her commission. The couple had 4 sons and 2 daughters. Mary worked at the Veterans Administration Center in Hot Springs, South Dakota, commuting 120 miles round trip for 8 years. She accompanied critical VA patients as a flight nurse on Piper Cubs, flown out of an airstrip near Ulrichs, South Dakota. For any of you that know what a Piper Cub is, it is not a very big airplane, sometimes in very challenging weather. She also worked for the Indian Health Service at Susan Hospital in Rapid City for 28 years, where she developed a nursing care program that was used throughout the Indian Health Service. In 1971, she was instrumental in developing the first emergency medical training courses for ambulance drivers in the West River area, which eventually led to training of paramedics. Her efforts at St. John's Hospital regarding disaster preparedness training was very much appreciated during the 1972 flood. In San Diego, California, in May of 2010, Mary received the prestigious Carworth Wagner Nurse of the Year Award from Rear Admiral Carrie Page Nestler, Chief Nurse of the United States Public Health Service. Also in July of 2010, at a conference in Washington, D.C., Mary was awarded the Chief Nurse Officer Award for Outstanding Service from the United States Public Health Service, and also received a certificate of recognition from the Indian Health Service for her dedication and service to the Indian population here in Rapid City. After 60 years of nursing, Mary finally retired in August of 2010 at the very young age of 80. Sorry, Mary, I just gave away your age. She is the president of the Military Officers Association, the Black Hills chapter, is a member of the Women's Veteran of the Black Hills, the Air Force Nurses Association, and the American Nurses Association, SDNA, and serves on the Committee of Energy Management in Rapid City. Mary Piper, RN, should be commended for her time and her service to her community and to her country. Ladies and gentlemen, your Veteran of the Month.
Of course, I have to say a word, and I'll not take too much time, but I do want to share a few things with you. First of all, I am very thankful to who selected me as Veteran of the Month. And here I am, 57 years later. I arrived in Rapid City in 1954. And I've got so much to be thankful for all the way around, from the beginning of my life until now. As he said, I was born in San Antonio, Texas, during the Depression. And, of course, I know what it's like to be poor. But, you know, being an American citizen, it's been a great country. You know, many times we don't realize where we really live. You know, people complain about everything, the prices and everything else, and I think, you know, you're going to be okay. I survived the Depression, and so will you. I'm sorry that we have to go through hard times again, but, you know, we'll survive. One thing I have to tell you about my arrival to Rapid City was, first of all, I didn't know where Rapid City was when I got my orders. And when I looked at the map, I thought, oh my God, it's way up there, from San Antonio way up there. And I thought, oh, well, of course, after my training of 3 weeks at Gunner Air Force Base, they teach you how to salute and how to march and how to be an officer. I took a commercial plane and landed in Rapid City. Well, of course, as we flew over, I looked down and I thought, oh my God, this is forsaken. Because it was barren, there was nothing, there weren't even trees out of, you know, I thought, I can't believe this. And then we landed at this tiny little airport, and I thought, this is worse than ever. Well, as I got out of the plane, the chief nurse was there waiting for me, and she introduced herself, and she said, welcome to Ellsworth. And I thought, oh, thank you very much. She said, the staff car is waiting for you. And I thought, a staff car? I'm just a second lieutenant. That's usually used for colonels and generals. But nevertheless, I was very honored. Got on base, of course. The chief nurse had told me all about what I was going to do. And when we arrived, she said, you'll be living at the officers' quarters. The men live on one wing, visiting male officers live on the first floor, and the nurses live on the second floor. And I thought, my gosh, my mother would die if she would know that we are doing this. Because, you know, in those times, us young ladies didn't do that. And so it was a little shock for me, and I never did tell her, because I think she'd have been very unhappy. You know, I had to let her know that I'm okay. So that's the history of when I arrived in Rapid City. And I certainly did not expect to stay in Rapid City this length of time. But you know, I met people from Rapid City, and they were so friendly and so nice. They invited me to dinner, and I became part of Rapid City. Then, of course, after I married Piper, as I call him, we decided we would live in Rapid City and had our 6 children. They all went to school, and I'll tell you, the schools in Rapid City are great. My kids had a good education. Of course, the kids have to study, you know. They can't just play soccer and baseball and everything else. They've got to study in order to be able to get to college. And so, therefore, I really have to commend the schools in Rapid City. They've always been good, and I think they continue to be good. So I don't think that the citizens of Rapid City can complain too much about our school system. At the same time, we used to play golf on the 9-hole golf course. The nurses and the fighter pilots would go over to the 9-hole golf course. Well, Jackson Boulevard was one big pothole. I am not kidding you. And I don't mean the little potholes. I mean the big potholes. Well, anyway, my Piper, who was an engineer, said, you know, they don't have any drainage around here. That's why they have the problems they do. Rimrock Highway was one dirt road, and we would just go up all the way to a fishing hole, which was right by High Sega. Anyway, those are just the little things that happened during that period of time of 1954. Nevertheless, I am very glad that the mayor and the commission, all the council members have agreed to repair our cities and fix the sewer systems for finally. I mean, I'm just so glad to see. It's inconvenient, I'm sure, for all of us right now. But you know, in the long run, our city's going to look beautiful. And if we all make every effort to keep it beautiful, I think we'll be okay. Because I think that it is a beautiful city. Like I said, we fell in love with the Black Hills. It's been a great place to live. And God, of course, has been very good to me. Now, you know, I had to really be healthy in order to work 60 years as a nurse. And I have to give him credit. And I have to give him credit for all the awards I have received, because it is through him that I was able to nurse and take care of the patients. So I thank you very much for this opportunity to say a few words and tell you how great Rapid City is. Yes, we have problems, but you know, life is not going to be easy for any of us. The thing we have to remember is we have to pray. Pray all the time, and God will take care of us. And that's my feeling about everything. If we just kneel down and pray, if the whole country would just kneel down and pray, we would be better off, and God would answer us, because he does answer our prayers. And as I said, I am very proud to be an American of Mexican descent coming from San Antonio, Texas. Thank all of you very much. Thank you.
Chief is, I don't see, is Tim here? Assistant Chief Kobus? He's not here, so we're not doing that tonight? Okay, very good. Thank you. And Mary, congratulations. It's really been an honor of mine to know you for 40 years, and you're very gracious, and you've been very helpful to our community. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That does take us through the awards and recognitions. Next item on our agenda is the general public comment period. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Now, action will not be taken tonight at the meeting unless the item is placed on the agenda by the unanimous vote of the council members present. I do not have any speaker request forms for any item not on the agenda. Anyone in the audience have an item that they would like to discuss that is not on the agenda? If not, thank you, everyone. We will move on. We are now on to the non-public hearing items. These are items 3 through 48 inclusive. 3 through 48 inclusive. And the chair would look for motion to open the public comment period on items 3 through 36 inclusive, please.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. I do not have any speaker request forms for items 3 through 36. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on any item 3 through 36 inclusive? If not, the chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period on items 3 through 36.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. We are on to the consent calendar. Items 3 through 34 inclusive. Chair would ask if there's any items that need to be pulled from the consent calendar. I do have items 15 and 28 to pull from the consent calendar. Any other items that need to be pulled from the consent calendar, please turn on your light. If not, thank you, everyone. Chair would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar. Items 3 through 34 inclusive, with the exception of items 15 and 28, please. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 15 and 28 are actually the same items, and we can probably handle these in the same motion. Is that correct, Jason? Brett, we need to continue both of these items? Mr. Limbaugh?
Yes. They are both the bicycle master plan. We want to take some time to do some more work on those at committee and then bring them back.
Can you give me a date specific, 2 weeks, or what are you looking for as far as the time extension?
Well, we're looking to bring them back to council on the 18th.
On the 18th?
Yes.
Very good. Deb, could you please read in items both 15 and 18? I believe they're the same thing, and we're looking for a motion to continue both these items to the 18th.
Thank you, Mayor. 28 is to approve Rapid City Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan and continue till July 18th, if we could.
And can we take up both items 15 and 18 together? Is that part of your motion?
15 and 28 together?
Yes, 15 and 28, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second, and that motion is to continue both items 15 and 28 to the 18th City Council meeting. In discussion on that motion, let's go to Alderman Aaron Costello.
Thank you. While it would have been my great delight to have been part of the council approving this my last full meeting, I really appreciate staff taking extra time to delve into this to make sure that this plan is exactly what we want to use to guide us for the next decades of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So thank you to staff for all your hard work on this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is to continue both items 15 and 28 to the July 18th City Council meeting. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to the end of the consent calendar. We're on to the continued consent calendar. These are items 35 and 36, and the chair would ask if either one of these items need to be pulled from the consent calendar.
No, sir.
Okay, very good. How about from the council? If not, the chair would look for a motion to approve the motion to continue both items to the July 5th, 2011 City Council meeting. This is items 35 and 36. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Charlene, to get both of those? In discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you. That does take us to the end of the continued consent items. We're on to the non-consent items. These are items 37 through 48. 37 through 48. The chair would look for a motion to open the public comment period on items 37 through 48 inclusive.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We are into public comment periods. I do have two speaker request forms. First one is from Tom Schonenstead, item number 42, Hills Live. Now, just please keep in mind, we do time this, so as you're going through, please identify yourself for the record, and if you'd watch the lights up here, when there's about 30 seconds left, it will turn yellow, and if it turns red, we would just ask you to finalize your remarks. With that, Tom, nice to see you. If you please identify yourself.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Tom Shainstead. I work with the Hills Live Festival in Rapid City, and I don't need a whole lot of time, but I do have some concerns. Just recently was down at Memorial Park kind of checking some things out for the festival, which is coming up here in a few weeks, and close to 40 trees were planted over the last couple of weeks down at Memorial Park. And that was a concern to me on a couple of different levels, one of which is that it presented a lot of viewing problems for people that are going to be attending the festival. A couple of trees actually were planted right where we put a stage. And if you're familiar with some of the floodplain restrictions that we have down there, we really don't have the ability to go elsewhere with things like that. Well, we did have a discussion with Jerry Cole and came to a compromise down there with this particular instance. But it brought up a greater concern, and that is for us to have the ability to plan year after year, not really knowing what's happening with the Parks Department and some of the things that they have planned down there. We have investors. We have thousands of people that give a lot of money, $350,000 every year to put this on, and out of respect to them and us, we need to know what's happening with the Parks Department and what their long-range plans are so that we can work together. I mean, I don't feel like we have to be in Memorial Park, that somehow it's like we're entitled to it. We believe it's been good for Rapid City. both monetarily for Rapid City and spiritually, and we would love to be able to stay here, but there has to be a better working arrangement in order for that to happen, so that we don't have surprises. The head of the Parks Department, Jerry Cole, has made no bones about the fact that he doesn't believe we belong there. If it was up to him, we would not be able to operate a Memorial Park. His comments were made to me along with Ron Weifenbach, that he indicated that that is a memorial park, and out of the respect to the people who died in Memorial Park, we should not have events like this in the park. He's repeated those comments to me on numerous occasions, and so I don't really feel like I need to get in the middle of your relationship as the city and the Parks Department, but I feel like something has to be done so that we can have a better working arrangement, and so we're all on the same page.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from Butch Thompson, item number 42, same item. Again, Butch, if you would please come forward, identify yourself for the record, and then the floor is yours, sir.
Hi, I'm Butch Thompson. I had heard about the problem with the trees, and went down and checked them out. It is quite an issue, and somebody from the Parks Department, especially somebody that's in charge of the Parks Department, being against Hills Alive being there, really strikes me deeply. As being somebody that actually lost a sister in the flood, a sister who was an incredible Christian, somebody that was both that was all three, a friend, a sister, and almost like a father to me. She would make no bones about the fact that she would relish the fact that we have such an event at Memorial Park, and I know that she is the type of person that this park was developed for, and the park wasn't developed just for those who passed. It was developed for those who also lived through it, and I'm one of those. And I would certainly like further investigation into the planning and into the planting of the trees, and whether they couldn't do more good elsewhere, because I know that that park, as it's being used presently for Hills Alive and for the other events, sure helps me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I do not have any additional speaker request forms. There again, please keep in mind, we are dealing with items 37 through 48 inclusive. Any additional comments from anyone from the public? If not, the chair, I'm sorry, Mr. Brown, I'm looking for a motion to actually close the public comment period at this time.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So
Okay,
moved.
thank you. We have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Mr. Brown, did you have a comment, or?
Yes, I had a comment about the Hills Alive or the Memorial Park.
That will be, if it's all right, Mr. Brown, we'll actually take that up individual on item number 42, if we may?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's go ahead and start with the ordinances. Deb, would you please read in item number 37, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Number 37 is second reading ordinance number 5720 regarding supplemental appropriation number 5 for 2011, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. This is item number 37, second reading of ordinance number 5720. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 38, please.
38 is first reading of ordinance number 5725, clarifying the permissible fireworks in the city of Rapid City by amending section 8.24.020 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 39, please.
39 is a request by Mark Abkamp for SBC Archway 7th LLC for preliminary plat located in section 27, located at 2320, 2340, and 2350 Sophia Court, and I move approval with stipulations.
We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations. This is item number 39, which is a preliminary plat. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 40, please.
Number 40 is a request by CTEC Engineering Services Incorporated for Colonial Pines Hills Sanitary District for a preliminary plat located at 7804 Croyle Avenue. Approval with stipulations, please.
We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 41.
41 is a request by Spurlick Consulting Incorporated for Ronald Shape for a preliminary plat located at eastern terminus of Homestead Street and north of Carl Avenue. And the request is to send back to the August 4th, 2011 Planning Commission meeting for reconsideration at the applicant's request. And that would be my motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to send this back to the August 4th, 2011 Planning Commission at the applicant's request. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 42, please.
42 is the Hills Live and Memorial discussion, and I move
To acknowledge?
the discussion. Yep.
Yep. We have a motion and a second to acknowledge. Discussion on that motion. Now I think we go to Mr. Alderman Gary Brown. Okay, let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker. Okay, we'll go to Gary Brown first. Mr. Brown.
I won the bingo. Okay, thank you. I see a lot of the newly elected council members in the audience that's going to be taking over. And I think the Memorial Park, as it's now called, is an issue we should at one point have a discussion about. Previous councils have named that a memorial park for the 238 people that were killed. Nobody disagrees with that. Over time, the events, as they're called, events, are starting to come into the park. Now, the events are getting bigger, and as they're more successful, like Hills Alive has been, there's going to be more people wanting to come down here and have a free event. So we're going to have, in my mind, we're going to have to discussion. Are we going to have a memorial park for everybody, or are we going to have an event park in that area? Now, if we're going to have an event park, you're probably going to start having to look at fees and that. I see one conflict coming down the road. If there is a paid event that comes at the same time at the Civic Center, a large event, they're going to have the parking at the Civic Center for those people who paid for the Civic Center. That's going to cause a problem for the people that are going to come down for a free event at the park. And we're going to have a conflict going on. We need to have a decision, I think, to find out, are we going to have a memorial park and have that, or are we going to have an event park? And then we're going to have to define what we want down there. So I'll probably bring that up again after we have the new council brought on that, because I think we're going to have it clear, and who's going to have control of the park. That.
Thank you, sir. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
I think the Hills Alive is a very positive thing for Rapid City, and I agree with Mr. Brown that we do need to look into this, since as far as the be a memorial park, but also a park for the people. What we can do about that. And then also, I know there was a concern brought up last year about some noise, and I don't know, that people were complaining about coming from Hills Alive, and I don't know if anything different is going to be done. And I agree with the Hills Alive people that we can't be, I mean, I love trees, but it's like we probably need to look at keeping open areas and not put trees right in the middle of where, find the balance, and that we have a comprehensive plan for that. And then also, I didn't know if Mr. Cole would like to say anything because of comments that have been made earlier. So I would like to see if he has anything he'd like to say. Thank you.
Mr. Cole, did you have anything to add? There wasn't a specific question there, but is.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Why don't you explain what you explained to me as far as accommodating Hills Alive with the fact that we moved numerous trees to make sure that they had their line of sight?
For the last couple of years, the Urban Forestry Board and the Beautification Board have been writing grants and getting money for trees for replacement, because the Parks Department has to look out 30 years in the future of what trees are not going to be there and trying to replace those trees. So and that's what we do with all of our parks. Beautification got a Stearns grant. We bought trees. The Urban Forestry Board and the Beautification Board both okayed the plantings into the park. We did plant about 40 trees in the park, and we have to plant them in the open areas because we can't plant them under the existing trees, otherwise they don't grow. So what happened is when Hills Alive contacted us, we discussed the trees. We actually took 10 trees out, what we felt that were restricting viewing, left the trees on the edges of the main stage. So we still have some growth in there. Those trees we took out, we took to Canyon Lake Park and we planted them in Canyon Lake Park. So they're still there. And what has happened is maintaining a park has come up against an event of how we maintain. Now, as for the statements that I made, yes, I made those statements that said large events that are going to bring in 10, 15, 20, 30,000 people, we need to have that discussion of whether they should be in Memorial Park. The Parks Board has always told me that they would prefer not to have those events in Memorial Park. Let's find another place. If that means that we have to look at in the future of building an outdoor events area, let's do that. Let's look at that. But we need to have that discussion about, do we have 2 or 3 more of these large events in Memorial Park? Because they can sure come forward, and we'll grant them permission to have them. And that's a discussion we need to do.
Okay, thank you. Bonnie, you still have the floor, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, thank you. I just kind of wanted to open up and give people opportunity to express themselves, and I appreciate the Hills Alive people to bring in their concerns forward to us, and also I think it's all about trying to work together to find solutions, so thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm the one that put this on the agenda for the discussion. If I thought there would have been a discussion in the works or had been being taken place, I wouldn't have had to put this on the agenda. I first found out about this through an email from Mr. Shainstead in reference to the trees in Memorial Park. I met Mr. Cole, Mr. Shainstead, and a few other people at the park to understand how this transpired. In that conversation, it was made very clear to me that the Parks Board, whether Jerry was speaking for them or not, did not want this event to happen in Memorial Park. And I think the comment up here was made, who has control of the park? And I can tell you who has control of the park. The citizens do. The citizens of our community. And they come out in the groves, 20 to 30,000 people at a time, to enjoy Hills Alive. It's a non-alcoholic event. It's a free event. I can take my grandchildren to it, my family to it, with no issues at all. It was very deliberate to me that because this council at some point had written a 5-year contract with Hills Alive, that we supported what Hills Alive does and what they do in the future. I wanted to have this conversation so that my colleagues up here would understand what Mr. Shainstead has been going through to try to conduct the Hills Alive in Memorial Park. If Hills Alive is not wanted in Memorial Park, tell Mr. Shainstead so he can remove it and go to another location, which would be hugely unfortunate for the citizens of our community and the people that attend Hills Alive. As to whether they coordinate this with the Civic Center, the only people that don't coordinate with Hills Alive are the people that planted the trees and the people who have specific things that are happening in that park that I would like to have a resolution. I'm hoping, since I went on talking before I made the resolution, that us council up here would show support for Hills Alive, as we are the elected citizens of this community and we represent the people in our wards and our constituents. I know that there's going to be construction in the park in the next year. I would hope that Hills Alive would be part of that conversation. As I spoke to the architect who is hired by the city, there was ways that had Hills Alive been acknowledged about these trees, that we could accomplish the mission with that architect. He could have set those trees up and made it sufficient to be able to plant them and work to the benefit of everybody involved. I would assume that when that contract was signed for that 5 years for Hills Alive to have this event there, that that's what we really meant. This is what's happening in our community right now, this divisiveness. The people control our community, and I'm going to stand on this one. No little committee that is not voted in by the people will hold me accountable when I'm voted in by the people. I would hope that this council could see this, stand on this one, and say, you know what, we support you, Hills Alive, and we want you to be involved. We want to keep this in the park. It is a memorial park. Mr. Thompson expressed his feelings. I'll express mine. I lost a dear friend in the flood. And I'll guarantee you one thing, she would love for me to celebrate life in that park, in that Memorial Parkway. That's why they call it a memorial, so we can go there and we can celebrate life. And I think that's what happens during Hills Alive. I think it's a great event for all the families in our community. No restrictions involved. You show up, you come in, you can listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things I'm noticing and I'm listening to it. It sounds like we need a little bit of long-term planning in our parks. So when people have events, they know they're wanted there, they know that there's changes there, and that we can make those changes or already have that policy and procedure of changes to help people on their events, either to move somewhere bigger or to accommodate them for the future. Because the trees wouldn't have been put there if we had some type of notification to those event planners of what's going to happen next and giving them enough time to change in case they did want to put the trees there and it was going to cause an issue with this event. I think the solution is notification. Parks is going to have to, it seems like, put up a policy and procedure manual for people, because we're having this every couple of years with Hills Alive. I'm told that it's supposed to hold like 500 people at that stage, but if it is supposed to only hold 500 people at that stage, then why weren't these people told that that's once their event went past 500 people that they needed to move that event? The other thing is there's a stage there and you're planting trees by a stage. That's not common sense to me. If you're trying to see, you have a park where you have a stage to see a stage for events, why would you put trees right in front of or by a stage? I understand we need trees in the park. I understand both sides of this issue, but the bottom line is you have to have with the parks a long-term plan, and you have to have some type of policy and procedure so when people have events in our parks, whether it's Canyon Lake or Memorial Park or anywhere in our parks, that they have an understanding instead of feeling like they keep getting pushed back or pushed out. There's got to be that. If we can do that, if we can work this into something with Jerry Cole and the committees and the event people, I think we can find some good solutions. So I would say for the future, we should look at some long-term planning again and some policy and procedure changes. So Hills Alive or anybody that comes to our parks are welcome. And Mr. Weifenbach's right. Those parks are for the citizens of Rapid City to enjoy in many events and many positive events in our city. And it's been a great attribute to have Hills Alive there. People have loved it, and it's something we should work on to find some solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Alderwoman Hadcock, for that comment about long-term planning. I couldn't agree more. There's three main reasons why I support Hills Alive, and I think the city should too. First and foremost, this is, from an economic standpoint, a win. We got a park that obviously there are O&M costs to operational and maintenance costs keeping up that park. And yet, as pointed out, no one contests that we have thousands of individuals coming to the city, spending their money because of that event. From an economic standpoint, seems like an obvious for me that this is a win. The second is culturally. You know, we are a Judeo-Christian society from a historical point of view. And personally, I think any sort of religious institution or even event that supports family values and strong family ties, I want to see encouraged in our city. I think that's a good thing for the city and for the individual families that participate. And then secondly, or lastly, from a societal standpoint, this encourages community involvement and, again, encourages family values. Two things that unite our community around a park, more specifically a memorial park, and remembering the 1972 flood. Along with Alderman Weifenbach, I can't think of a better way to memorialize those that were lost in that flood. One thing I did want to clarify on very quickly is that unfortunately there was a comment about whether or not this has to be an event park or a park, kind of an either-or argument. I guess I disagree with that, and that kind of seems counterintuitive to what the council has been currently doing. We currently hold a Summer and Nights event on a street. Obviously, we can use things for multiple purposes. Another example is we had a roller derby that was quite a good time recently on Kansas City Street. We recently, within this last week, used Horace Mann Pool to watch movies. Obviously, I think it's very apparent that we can use things for multiple purposes. Not only can it be at a park, but it can be an event center. Frankly, it just seems counterintuitive to me that it has to be one or the other, and I don't think that logically stands up. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. For the sake of discussion, I would like to offer a motion to draft a resolution of support for Hills Live to remain in Memorial Park and bring it to the next Legal and Finance Committee meeting for further review.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and that is to ask staff to draft a resolution to bring back to Legal and Finance in support of Hills Alive in Memorial Park. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Can you, I just want to say that we do support you already. I just want to make sure, and 2 years ago we supported you, but how are we going to change by policy and procedure to make sure that they don't plant any more trees or we have any more problems? I mean, the resolution is a pretty way to say we support it, but I think we need a little more teeth to it. We need something so when they come back, they feel welcome. So the resolution is good. Could we add anything to that, council, so when it comes back that it has a little more teeth to it, that maybe they can have some notification if there's changes or something in this? Because again, I think we all support Hills Alive, but their main issue tonight is not just support, it's the teeth in it to make sure that they are not coming back every year or every 2 years, because 2 years we had the same problem and we haven't had any changes. So again, Mayor, if you could help me somehow to make this so it'd be a little bit more with teeth in it.
I think what you can do, Alderwoman Hadcock, is as it comes back through the Legal and Finance Committee, you can actually make amendments to any language at that point to accommodate your wishes.
And thank you. I would like to work with Jerry Cole and maybe some of the parks people to kind of find something that would find solution for these people and events for the future. So not only for this resolution, but for anybody who wants events in our park, because again, it's for the citizens of Rapid City. Those parks are to be enjoyed.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate the motion. I think it's a good motion, and it can develop. But I wanted to say thank you to Tom for sticking with it and not giving up and understanding that this council does believe, the citizens of Rapid City believe in Hills Alive. We believe in Hills Alive, and we're going to make sure that it continues to move forward. And the best thing that can happen is we wear out that concrete, we wear out that band shell, and we wear out that grass. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
One more thing to ask, if we could, Mayor, when we do that resolution, could we have how many events are in the different parks in Rapid City, so when we look at this, we can do some resolutions or some changes not only for this one, but for other events. If we could have the total amount and what those events are from Jerry Cole and the Parks Department, that would be huge for the success of some of the changes we need to make. Thank you.
I think we can, but if it's all right with you, Alderwoman Hadcock, I think I'll ask Jerry to actually make that a separate report versus trying to incorporate that into the resolution.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion, excuse me, motion on the floor is to ask staff to draft a resolution, bring it back to Legal and Finance. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 43, please. Deb, could you please read that in?
You're welcome. I talked so much, I lost my page. Sorry.
That's all right.
43 is the evidence building and public safety building parking ramp financing options.
Pauline? Go to
Thank
Paul-
you.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr. Mayor. I did send out an email late this afternoon with my memo. There's also a copy for you on your dais, and I have asked Charlene to attach it to the agenda also, so it's there for historical purposes. Since the Legal and Finance Committee meeting, there's been another option brought forward, and so two different things that we need to come from tonight. First of all is to agree to an interest rate that we would be paying the county for the city's portion, and then also to give staff direction as to which funding option we should try to negotiate into the contract at this point. The interest rate by the county's bond council is 4.111%. This is a blended rate between their different bond issues, and then you deduct the interest rebate that they get from the federal government under the recovery bonds. With this, the interest would nothing would be paid until the construction is final, and so the city knows the exact amount of their portion. It's estimated to be about 61%, so we would not make any payments until the construction is final. The four different options for the annual payments, or for the payments on this, would be to make annual payments on a 30-year amortization. Their bonds are for 30 years, so we could do a 30-year amortization. The annual payment would be approximately $225,000. Possible funding sources for this annual payment could initially be the 2012 or CIP contingency funds. After the initial payments are made, a different funding source could be identified during the budgeting process. The second option would to make annual payments to the county for the principal and interest on a 30-year amortization with a 5-year balloon payment at the end of that. Again, the annual payments would be approximately $225,000, and the funding source could be the 2012 or CIP contingency funds. Third option is to make annual payments to the county for interest only on a 30-year amortization with the balloon payment in 5 years. This would bring the annual payments down to $158,000 approximately. Again, the same funding source of the 2012 or CIP contingency funds at this time. The fourth option would be to make no annual payments to the county and then have a 5-year balloon, which could possibly be funded through the next round of the 2012 allocations. My recommendation on this one would be to approve the first option, to make annual payments as we go, with the opportunity to pay off the loan early at any time. And that way, the council has some flexibility, and it still keeps the 2012 program intact.
So
if anybody
Pauline,
has any
you're
questions.
looking for two things. You're looking for acknowledgement of the interest rate at 4.111, and your recommendation as far as the funding scenario would be the first bullet point, which would be to make payments based upon a 30-year amortization. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. With that, let's have some discussion. Tell you what, for the sake of discussion, can we get a motion on the floor, please?
Motion to
For the recommendation of the finance officer.
Second.
Thank you. For discussion, thank you. The motion on the floor is to approve the interest rate of 4.11 and consider option number 1 as far as the payment schedule. With that, let's have some discussion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Pauline, could you tell me what the timeline is on this? Do we have to make a decision tonight? Are they crunched for time for us to make a decision?
Pauline?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In talking with the county and also their bond council, they would like to have some direction as to what to put into the agreement. As far as the payment plan is concerned, there is opportunity at that time to either approve or not approve what is recommended as part of the agreement. Mr. Green would probably have a better idea on the actual timeline than I do, though.
Mr. Green, can you enlighten us?
Certainly, if the council remembers, we're actually over the time when the council wanted to have this finalized. That was largely the result of the involvement of bond counsel at various points, because they have required us to combine a number of agreements that we have with the county for the properties over there, and it's taken some time to work through a number of those issues. So at this point, I think the county is fairly anxious to have a decision on this. and so the sooner the better.
Mr. Green, and I'm going to go back to the statement that Pauline made, and that was the fact, what they're really looking for is affirmation of the interest rate of 4.11%, and that once the agreement is written, the council could choose another funding option. Is that a fair statement?
That's absolutely a fair statement. We
Okay.
are in the drafting phase at this point, and we're looking for direction on what to insert into the agreement, but that could be changed.
And that would require bringing it back through legal and finance onto the city council for approval.
It absolutely requires that,
Okay,
yes.
very good.
So again, we're not, stuck on this one. What we can do, we can make changes in between if we find some better options.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, further discussion. The motion on the floor is to acknowledge or to accept the interest rate of 4.111, 310, and at this point to also accept the recommendation from the finance office to go with the first option, which is go with the 30-year amortization and with the annual payments of approximately $225,000. Keep in mind, the council does have flexibility when approving the final agreement. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to the Public Works Committee items. We'll go to Sam Quaker, who's chair of the Public Works. Could you please read in item number 44, please?
Item 44 is to request authorization to select Williams and Associates for design services for youth and family services. Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Sure. Let's go to Alderman Aaron Costello.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, I was looking through the minutes and you abstained from this item, is that correct? In
44?
On a 44 in Public Works? I must have been looking at the wrong minutes then. Okay. Very well. You know what you're doing.
Are we sure he knows what he's doing? Okay. Says he does. Okay, the motion on the floor is for approval. We're dealing with item number 44, which is request. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Brown, did you abstain? Okay, very good. Item number 45. Alderman Quaker, could you please read that in?
Item 45 is regarding Vision 2020 Goal Number 2, Strategic Beautification Presentation.
Very good. Let's go to Pat Roseland, who is going to give us a presentation.
Thank you. I'm Pat Roseland. I'm here tonight as chairman of the Vision 2020 Strategic Goal Committee Beautification Program. First, I'd like to recognize those committee members that were chosen for this group. We've been meeting for 6 months. Steve Doshier, Aaron Costello, Wes Storm, Craig Thiessen, Dan Lindquist, Robert Ellis, who's been immeasurably helping us out here, Linda Lee Viken, Scott Engman, Gary Brown, Ruth Brennan, Susan Nolan, and Jerry Cole. Other Rapid City stakeholders at this committee had input in from were Rapid City Chamber of Commerce, Green Cities Task Force, Mount Rushmore Road Group, Destination Rapid City, Rapid City Historic Preservation Commission, Mariana Hayes. And again, it's another thank you to Brenda Vespested for doing the minutes for us and keeping us in line in that respect. The Vision 2020 strategic plan was basically to develop a strategic plan to help us guide the city government in preparing for the future. Community asked, how do you envision Rapid City looking in the year 2020? What would you like to see, like Rapid City to be in the year 2020? Numerous meetings were held in 2009 concerning basically input from stakeholders, city council, and public input to basically get us started for this. Input, summarize, 5 goals were established. Attract and expand high-skilled business, regional hub for medical, education, tourism. Develop interconnected parks, arts, and recreation, accessible, safe, and convenient transportation system. Our task for Vision 2020 Goal Number 2, beautification. By 2020, Rapid City will develop and implement a beautification program beginning with the appearance of its entrances and expanding to the overall community that embodies a consistent theme that is aesthetically pleasing, and pedestrian-friendly. The Rapid City report card that was given to us probably this year, of 456 responses, basically giving us a little more input on how we should carry on our meetings and reach our goals. We were with the Rapid City report card much above. We have availability of paths and walking trails, preservation of natural areas such as open space, farmlands, and green belts, which we have abundance here in Rapid City. Biking trails, hiking trails through the parks. The Rapid City report card above, again, ease of bicycle travel, quality of overall natural environment, and obviously in the future you'll have a bicycle master plan for Rapid City, so that is moving forward. Basically, a park system here in Rapid City, bike paths, trails, as basically one connector is missing, the availability of the people in the downtown area to reach the bike path, which there's very little connection other than going through Omaha Street, which is dangerous, so that we'll have to be looking forward to in the future. Again, bike paths, Canyon Lake, the beautiful areas that we have in Rapid City. Another Rapid City report card, basically similar to other areas, rundown buildings, weed lots, and junk. Vehicles seen as major problems, ease of walking. Basically distraction from the city of Rapid, deteriorating buildings, unmowed grass, and deteriorating sidewalks, and basically who's responsible for repairing the sidewalks, city or property owners. And basically we got here in Rapid City, a telephone pole stick in the middle of a sidewalk with a sign next to it, do not block crosswalk. We have a couple areas like that in Rapid City that need to be looked at, probably quite a few of them. Really no, Rapid City report card below, none. And much below the overall appearance of Rapid City, which surprised me because I think Rapid City is a beautiful town, but still there is a lot of trash blowing around with the wind. There's a lot of wind here, and code enforcement needs to be more in tune with weeds, abandoned buildings, and so on, sidewalk maintenance, and cleanliness of Rapid City. Again, there's cars, there's visual the visual clutter with the power lines going across the streets, tremendous amount of power lines, and unmowed grasses again, whether in public areas or private areas. Abandoned houses, trailers parked in yards. Basically, all this is basically due to code enforcement. Sidewalk maintenance, this is a sidewalk here in Rapid City. It's gravel, and it's dangerous and unsafe for pedestrians. Goal 2 priorities, construct major signs at major entrances to Rapid City, bury overhead utility lines, remove or reduce billboards, perform more active code enforcement, repair and or construct missing sidewalks, bike lanes, and bike trails connecting the city. Priority 1, construct welcome signs at major entrances to the Rapid City. We have welcome signs to Rapid City here, which basically say there's really no basic connection between a welcome sign and Rapid City. It's built out of stones and rock that you can get from any of the home improvement centers. So that doesn't say a whole lot about what Rapid City really is. Something like this coming into Rapid City, which would be very welcome. It would bring people into Rapid City with rock, wood, welcome to Rapid City, city of presidents. Something like this would give an individuality to Rapid City and shows us that we are a city worth coming into and visiting. Mount Rushmore Road, hopefully in the next 2014, will be reconstructed to what this would be, hopefully after this, more cleaner look, a beautiful look, more pedestrian friendly, less power lines. This is 6th and Main Street and 8th Street before and after the reconstruction of Mount Rushmore Road. More pedestrian friendly again, safer walking areas where people can feel safe walking across the streets, and beautiful. Priority 2, bury overhead power lines. That's a very important, I think, aspect in the future of Rapid City, is to decrease the visual clutter in the sky with the power lines. And these alleys that the power lines are in could be used in a more constructive manner if those were buried underneath the ground. Priority, we remove or reduce billboards. I think we've done a pretty good job in with the citizens of Rapid City in moving forward with that. Again, billboards here to basically a visual clutter. More active code enforcement, again, as repeat, basically enforce the codes with the derelict buildings, cars parked in areas where they shouldn't be parked, mowing the grass, keeping the grass mowed, and trash picked up. Whether you can have private people do that for us or make it a public entity there. Again, mowing grass. And then priority 5, repair or construct missing sidewalks, bike lanes, and bike trails connecting the city. Again, we have missing areas of concrete with gravel there, or just, these are all in Rapid City. Sidewalks covered with plywood. Basically, is this the responsibility of the city to repair the sidewalks to get to this bad, or is it the responsibility of the personal property owners there? Needs to be advised to. Parks in Rapid City, very beautiful. We have a wonderful park system here in town, and this is a new, again, Mount Rushmore Road, new construction, crossing the street to Wilson Park from the other side of the street. Very safe, very pedestrian friendly, and no power lines above. Everything is buried, and that is basically a major concern when reconstructing Mount Rushmore Road, is to bury the power lines and find some way to pay for that. Bike paths in the city, make it easy for the bikers to travel back and forth through the city. Again, Mount Rushmore Road, as it's being reconstructed, pedestrian friendly, no power lines, and everything's clear, the sky is clear, and trees and greenery there. The Goal 2 priority summary, construct welcome signs at major entrances to Rapid City, bury overhead utility lines, remove or reduce billboards, perform more active code enforcement, repair and construct missing sidewalks, bike lines, and bike trails connecting the city. Where do we go from here? Create stakeholder groups to initiate priorities, seek public input, determine the cost and funding sources for these, develop an action plan, and implement. Thank you very much.
Pat, thank you. And I'd like to thank you and actually Susan and Ruth and the rest of your committee. I know that you've spent a lot of time and effort coming up with really a way to beautify our community. And I on behalf of the City Council and myself, I just want to thank you for all the hard work that you've put in. Quite honestly, Rapid City should be proud. We continue to move forward, we continue to beautify, and we continue to really care for the appearance and the overall quality of life in Rapid City. So thank you to you and your committee. Thank you for chairing. With that, are there any questions? Not. The motion we would be looking for is motion to acknowledge.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to acknowledge. Discussion on that motion. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Takes us to the bids. Pauline. Item number 46, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 46 is a bid for miscellaneous well abandonment, airport well, and marine life well project. We received two bids on this. The recommendation is to award the total bid in the amount of $14,712 to Antler Enterprises, Inc.
We have a motion and a second to award the bid to Alters Enterprise, Inc. for a grand total of $14,712. A discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Just a question. We're abandoning some wells out there. Robert, where are we going to get the water source for the airport and the surrounding area?
These are wells that haven't been used for quite some time, so just to protect the aquifer and make sure that it doesn't allow any pollutants to get into the aquifer, we need to cap these, make sure that there's no way for any type of moisture or pollution to get in there. So we haven't been using these wells for some time. The water at the airport is coming from a 12-inch line that is bringing treated water from the city out to the airport. And we are working on a long-term solution to get another 16-inch looped in out at the airport. And that's something you'll be hearing from in the near future as we bring forward a project recommendation.
Okay, I forgot we had the 12-inch, but I do remember we're going to go through Homestead if we could to get that 16-inch. So thank you, Robert. Just wondering if we were still using any type of well service out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. Motion on the floor. We do have a motion, correct, Charlene? Thank you. Motion on the floor is to award the total bid of $14,712. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. 47, please.
47 is the Signal Hill Sidewalk Project. We received 4 bids on this. The recommendation is to award the base bid in the amount of $174,028.40 to KRM Concrete LLC, and I will have Robert explain what the plan is going forward as well.
Mr. Ellis.
This is just forewarning on a change order that will be coming forward. We only had enough budget to award the base bid on this project. The base bid is going to bring sidewalk from 5th Street and from East Boulevard up to the top of Signal Hill. It will not install sidewalk at the top. That's what alternate 1 is the sidewalk at the top. We didn't have enough funds to award that tonight. We did go to the CIP committee last Friday and request additional funds through CIP contingency and affordable housing. That was approved. That will go forward to Legal and Finance and City Council here in the near future. And once council approves that, we will actually ask the contractor to change order in alternative number 1. So we will get the entire sidewalk built, but you'll see that coming through as a change order.
Okay, very good. Any discussion? Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Ellis, for using your creativity to get this project done. And I want to have a shout out to Alderman Hadcock for bringing this forward. And those people are going to really appreciate the sidewalk when it's done. It's been a long time coming. And with your creativity to get the piece connected in between done, I just applaud you guys. I really thank you. And I know those people in Ward 2 or on Skyline Drive, they're going to be very happy about this project. So thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is to award the contract, and we're awarding just the base bid to KRM Concrete LLC for a grand total of $174,028.40. Is that correct, Pauline?
That is correct.
Okay. Further discussion on that motion. Deb, do you have anything else? Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Barb Garcia because this was for affordable housing, money for infrastructure, and we have a lot of affordable housing and people that need the sidewalk for their kids. It's a safety factor for on top of that hill. Without Robert Ellis, Dale Tech, and Barb Garcia, this wouldn't have happened. So we'd like to thank them, and the people of Star Village, when I was walking around, they thank you as well. It's been about 30 years coming, so thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. And our crack secretary has just reminded me that we do not have a motion on the floor. So thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Sorry about that. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Robert, just a real quick question for you. The cost of the change order will be the same amount as the alternate number 1?
That's our goal, yes.
Because what we could do is if we could pay for it from council contingency and pay back council contingency to ensure that we don't exceed that amount. And could we?
Go to Robert Ellis. I think
You
the idea
could,
was
we have 30 days to award this, so the July 20th, the council would have to make a bid award. As far as getting approval for CIP contingency, I don't know if that needs to go through CIP committee and Legal and Finance, so I'm kind of seeing a nod from Jason Green, but I don't know that we could do that all tonight.
What I'm saying, Mayor, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please. You have the floor, sir.
Robert, what I'm saying is if it sounds like that alternative funding is going to come through, what we could do so that we can proceed tonight is we could amend the motion on the floor to take the $29,000 from council contingency and pay council contingency back. That way it makes things easier for you and makes things easier for everybody. Is that something that you can
I would be
support?
happy with that, yeah.
Okay, I'm unable to offer that motion now, but I would ask somebody to consider offering that motion. I think that would allow this to move forward.
You can do that. Okay, Mr. Green, are we okay with that? Okay, so we have a motion and a second, which is a substitute motion, and that is to award the base bid plus alternate number 1. The base bid being $174,028.40, and awarding the alternate number 1 for $29,894.90, and that the alternate 1 bid, or the alternate 1 amount, shall come from council contingency. Correct? Everyone clear on that motion? Alderwoman Hadcock.
Just one thing. Thank you, Sam, for bringing that forward. We had extra out of the affordable housing. We were using that 20,000, and only CIP would be about 8,000. So just so we're all clear where that money was coming from.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Everyone clear on the motion on the floor? Seeing no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Item number 48. Pauline?
That is the item that we would like to be tabled, please.
Yep. Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to table. No discussion on tabling motions. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to 48A. Pauline?
48A is to concur with the South Dakota Department of Transportation award for the East North Street reconstruction, Pine Street to Campbell Street. The state did receive 4 bids on this. Their recommendation is to award the bid to Heavy Constructors, Inc. in the total amount of $5,837,016.24. Again, I would need you to concur with the South Dakota Department of Transportation's award.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to concur with the state DOT with their awarding of the bid to Heavy Contractors, Inc. for a grand total of $5,837,016.24. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Can you tell me when they're starting this project by chance? Thank you, Robert.
Very soon.
Very soon. I can't tell you the exact date. We have not had a pre-construction meeting with the contractor, and that's usually when they inform us of their intention to start. But my guess is we're looking at within a month, they will be ready to have lane closures out there and start removing concrete.
Awesome, thank you.
Another cone zone. Okay. Everyone clear on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 48B. Pauline, we need to set a special council meeting to canvass the vote of the runoff election, and you're proposing July 5th at 6:45. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. So moved. We have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. That motion is to set a special council meeting to canvass the vote of the runoff election on July 5th at 6:45, which would be 15 minutes before the city council meeting. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
48C, discussion on executive sessions, and that would be Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor.
You have the floor.
Due to recent events, there's been some concerns raised about executive session. First and foremost, there's been some concerns regarding exactly what the rules and the law say about really the issue of confidentiality of executive sessions. And number two, the other issue that has been raised is really a trust factor, first and foremost among the citizens and the representatives that they have elected, and number two, amongst ourselves. Due to these recent events, I would kind of like to address exactly what rules we're playing by when dealing with executive sessions. And after researching the subject, I found that going back to 2008, our city attorney stated that there is a confidentiality that currently cloaks discussions in executive session. Those discussions are confidential because they need to be in order for the council to get good legal advice and to make decisions about matters that don't lend themselves to public discussion. I currently was under this assumption as well, but due to recent events, specifically dealing with political advertisements that have come out concerning closed-door meetings, I believe was the quote, I am concerned about what exactly the law is, so I guess I would turn to our city attorney about what exactly the law says about the confidentiality of these executive sessions. Mr. Green?
Mr. Green, do you understand the question?
I think that I do.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Well, I think I've addressed this largely in a recent memo to the council. There isn't a very specific statute on it. There are a number of statutes that, when read together, provide for confidentiality of those matters. Other than that, I would direct you to the memo I've provided to the council.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Additionally, how do we enforce that that information stays confidential? What does the law say about that?
Mr. Green.
It says very little, frankly. There is a statute that implies there could be a criminal violation for disclosing discussions. There's apparently some discussion among different attorney generals as to whether or not that in fact does apply or not, but there's nothing directly on point. I think that it is the obligation of elected officials to maintain that confidence of those communications within an executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Green. With that in mind, I guess I would ask, due to the recent events and the advertisements that have been put out concerning a September 20th, 2010 executive session meeting, I would ask for the justification of the person that provided that ad on what reasons that person would have. Specifically, Mayor Alan Hanks, I would ask why that was put out in the advertisement.
Well, Mr. Mason, you can certainly ask, and I'm going to respond very briefly because, quite honestly, I think it's inappropriate to drag any political race up to this dais. And at this point, quite honestly, it hasn't been done. I guess if you want an answer, it's very straightforward, and that is the fact that there was a vote taken at the 20th. That is what was referred to. That is as of public record. That is in the minutes of the city council meeting. So that is not an issue that was dealt with in executive session. And also to broach the subject, and there again, I'm going to keep this very, very short because there again, my intent is, and my expectation is that we never drag politics onto this dais. And obviously, that seems to be the issue here. But the topic was talked about by a council member at a public forum, and therefore it became public record, and therefore that it was no longer private communication. So with that, I would just point out that there has been numerous examples, including one I can think of specifically, of when we specifically gave directions to our city attorney dealing with the fire union, and we had a council person that came out of executive session and repeated verbatim the position that the city council was trying to take with the firefighters union, and was repeated from this dais. So
I appreciate that, Mayor. And that does kind of, I do want to clarify, I'm not trying to make this political, but I do want to know the rules that we're playing by here, and that is a very interesting point that was brought up concerning about whether or not, if it is brought out into the public arena, whether or not we as council members and elected representatives are still bound by confidentiality. A prime example that I have is currently there is a litigation matter that two of the people that are in the litigation are discussing that very publicly in the city. Now, because they're discussing it, are we as elected representatives allowed to discuss that? I mean, it seems obvious that we would still be bound by confidentiality, but the point is I'm curious when confidentiality applies and when it does not. And that's my question, is exactly what rules are we playing by here?
I'm going to turn to Jason Green, who is our city attorney. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mayor. The council's discussions in executive session are privileged and confidential. But to the extent that there is discussion publicly that does not reveal council's legal strategy or the actual discussions in executive session, that's fair game to comment on. Generally, I'm going to advise the council that if we are involved in litigation, that you do not discuss it publicly. I think that is prudent advice for any party that's involved in litigation. To the extent that others are discussing a matter publicly, it's fair game at that point.
Mr. Green, I guess I would additionally ask then, since obviously litigation is also a concern, but given the fact that we're also, as a municipality, working in an open market and a competitive market, we also have bidding strategies. So is that additionally included in things that we are bound by confidentiality with, or not?
Mr. Green.
If there's something discussed in executive session under that provision of the statute, then yes.
Thank you, Mr. Green. And I appreciate it. I just wanted to get this clarified. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach. Now,
Thank you, Mr.
Just one point. We do not have a motion on the floor, so thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second to acknowledge. My apologies, Mr. Weifenbach. The floor is yours.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the spirit of the conversation because I've had this conversation about where do we draw the line here, because I had some concerns about how we acted with the police department one night. And I've kept that to myself out of due respect for the rest of the council. And I would also wish that Mr. Green would reiterate what he said earlier about leaving it up to the council people, the mayor, and all those people, whether you bring that out in the public arena or not. Mr. Mayor, I would like Mr. Green to repeat that so we can all hear it one more time.
Mr. Green, do you understand the question or the request?
I'm not entirely sure I do. Was it the statement I made that what's discussed in executive session is off limits, but to the extent there is discussion publicly among others, that it's fair game for comment?
Earlier, you had mentioned about how we should take it upon ourselves to be appropriate in acting within reason and respect. I mean, I remember what words you used, but you put it very good. Putting the individual responsibility on us. If it's an executive session meeting, which I don't always agree with having executive sessions, but once they're there, there's a due respect that is to be had amongst all of us. And I think as this council turns over and has another lots of freshmen, I would say, I think this conversation needs to happen again. It needs to be very appropriate because I believe there's times when those lines are crossed, and that creates conflict, whether someone's using it for a political baseball bat or whether it happens in a conversation. I think it's appropriate. And if you would repeat, I mean, I guess I could go back on the record and repeat it. I mean,
I think what you're referring to is my comment that I believe it's the obligation of an elected official to maintain that confidentiality of the discussions in executive session.
Correct. That's what I wanted to hear one more time. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is to acknowledge. Seeing no further lights. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you for the discussion, everyone. That does take us down to the public hearing items. These are items 49 through 70 inclusive. 49 through 70. The chair would look for a motion to open the public comment periods, items 49 through 70, please. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. I do not have any speaker request forms on items 49 through 70. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to any items 49 through 70 inclusive? And actually, I think we probably also need to include, there was also a item 70A. Okay? Very good. Now, please keep in mind, during this part of the meeting, we do leave the public comment period open. So we will go to the continued public hearing consent items, items 49 and 50, and we'll ask, where's Mr. Limbaugh? Do we need either one of these items to be pulled?
No, sir.
Okay. Then the chair would look for a motion to approve the continued public hearing consent items, items 49 and 50, per the recommendation on the printed agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. That does take us to the end of the continued public hearing consent items. Chair would look for a motion to close the public hearing items, items 49 through 70. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. We're on to the consent public hearing items. These are items 51 through 68 inclusive. And the chair would ask if we need to pull any items 51 through 68. Mr. Brown, I believe you indicated item number 65. Is that correct? Okay. How about any additional items that we need to pull from the consent public hearing items, items 51 through 68? If not, the chair would look for a motion to approve the consent public hearing items 51 through 68 inclusive, with the exception of item number 65. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Deb, would you please read in item number 65, please?
Number 65 is the Mini Mart Incorporated DBA Mini Mart number 447, 1601 North Haynes Avenue for package off-sale malt beverage license. That's to move approval, or are we continuing it?
Move approval.
Move approval, please.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second for approval of item number 65, which is a off-sale malt beverage license renewal. Any discussion on that motion? And the record will show that Alderman Gary Brown will be abstaining. Yes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes with Alderman Gary Brown abstaining. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to the end of the consent public hearing calendar. We're on to the non-consent public hearing items, items 69 through 70. Deb, would you please read in Item number 69, please.
69 is to authorize the mayor and finance office to sign the waiver of right to protest a future assessment for installation of pavement, curb, gutter, sidewalk, streetlight, conduit, water, and sewer along Croyle Avenue and the section line highway as they abut Lot 1, Whispering Pine subdivision located at 7804 Croyle Avenue, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval, item number 69. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 70, please.
70 is a request by C-Tech Engineering Services Incorporated for Colonial Pines Hills Sanitary District for a variance to the subdivision regulations to waive the requirement to install pavement, curb, gutter, sidewalk, streetlight, conduit, water, and sewer along Croyle Avenue and the section line highway, and to dedicate additional right-of-way along the section line highway located at 7804 Croyle Avenue, and approve with stipulations, please.
We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulation. I believe the stipulation was a signing of the warp with what we just did. Is that correct, Vicki? Okay, very good. So we're in good shape. Discussion on that motion. Very good. Motion is for approval with the stipulation of the warp. Seeing no lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Pauline, the bill list. Oh, I'm sorry, we also had a 70A, which was a raffle request from Big Brothers Big Sisters. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Now, Pauline, the bill list, please.
The bill list as presented before you is for $6,710,371.52.
Okay, we have a motion. Charlene, did you get the second? We have a second, please. Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the bill list as published. Grand total, $6,710,371.52. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Mr. Green, do we have any items for the executive session?
Yes, and it's for the purposes permitted by SDCL 1-25-2, subdivision 3, pertaining to litigation.
Both items, do we have one or two items? Three items, and they're all dealing with the litigation?
Yes.
Okay, very good. We have a motion, please. We have a motion and a second to go into executive sessions for purposes permitted by SDCL 1-25-2, all three items dealing with the litigation. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Oh, let's take a real quick roll call, please. I heard a couple no's there. My apologies, I didn't catch who they were.
Davis. Davis? Hadcock. Kroger. Costello.
Aye.
Quaker. Waugh. Brown. Mason. Peterson. Wyffenbach. Motion carries.
Passes on an 8-2 vote. Thank you, everyone, in executive session. Thank you. Second to come out of executive session. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
I made it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. We're out of executive session. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd ask the council to direct the city attorney to reject the request for mediation in the Rupert matter.
In the Rupert matter?
Yes, sir.
Very good, thank you. Have a motion and a second to reject. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. We have a motion to adjourn, please.
Second.
We have a motion second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're out of here by 9. Very good. Thank you, everyone.
Well done.